Ambition, the mighty stallion that carries us to our destiny. However, as much as our brave pony pushes us to fulfill our destiny may be one of suffering or enlightenment. And whether we live a life of satisfaction is up to us, the person directing and in charge of our ambition. That is what ambition is. Only the horse that carries us to our destination. It's up to us to choose that destination and stay on that path. So before we dive into this, ask yourself this: am I living my best life? If so, how can you be better? If not, how may you live your best life? And finally, how may I temper my ambition to carry me to a prosperous destiny? With those questions asked, let's look at a classical example of the choice we face. In an ancient Greek parable called The Choice of Hercules, young Hercules was walking down a path when he encountered a crossroads. On the left, the goddess of virtue appears. On the right, the goddess of vice appears. Kaya, the goddess of vice, tells Hercules that her name is happiness. She promises Hercules a life of pleasure. He will not have to work a day in his life. He can eat all that he wants and sleep with as many people as he desires. And he will live out his life without ever encountering hardship. Aret, the goddess of virtue, tells Hercules that if he chooses to follow her, his life will be extraordinarily challenging. He will be constantly faced with adversities and pain, but in the end, he will experience true joy and wisdom, and he will achieve greatness. Hercules chose the path of virtue and went on to become a hero of Rome and a god. What would have become of Hercules, do you think, if there had been no lion, hydra, stag, or boar, and no savage criminals to rid the world of? What would he have done in the absence of such challenges? Obviously, he would have just rolled over in bed and gone back to sleep. So by snoring his life away in luxury and comfort, he never would have developed into the mighty Hercules. And even if he had, what good would it have done him? What would have been the use of those arms, that physique, and that noble soul, without crisis or conditions to stir him into action? Epictetus, Discourses 15 Against the Skeptics. Napoleon vigorously pursued his destiny, which led him to the greatest of heights and the most isolating of defeats. Sacrifice was surely made with millions of people vanquished in war. But to the French people, this was a sacrifice willingly made for the country of France. And, as long as they followed the man of destiny, they too would find their place on the mantle of greatness. As the French people ruthlessly sacrificed for their collective destiny, so did Napoleon. The man of destiny followed the path of ambition, abandoning his true love so that he may have an heir to his throne. In this way, his heart belonged to power and France. As the emperor famously said, "Power is my mistress. I have worked too hard at her conquest to allow anyone to take her away from me." And more potent, his last words: "France, the army, head of army, Josephine." Either for France or personal pride, Bonaparte continued down this path towards the fulfillment of his destiny. And of course, the mind of the little corporal was fully concerned with the cause of his nation, sleeping only in blocks of 3 to 4 hours and meticulously planning his next stroke of genius. Of course, this is coupled with the immense burden of the lives that will be taken and lost upon the execution of his orders. As is famously known, Bonaparte's ambition led him and France to brilliant successes and disastrous blunders. The ambition of the nation and its emperor gave both the blessing of history's greatness, but the burden of great loss and suffering. Ambition is merely the driving factor within our lives. We all have it, yet we all direct our ambitions into vastly different directions. That is because we are behind the actions and decisions that our ambitions push us to make. We are the commanders of our own individual destinies. And with bold and brilliant leadership, just as Napoleon, there may rise a leader who may command our collective destiny towards a greater future to which our ambitions and ideals will guide us. However, we all stand before a grand chessboard, and only you may command your actions. The whole world isn't chess. Any move can be the death of you. Do anything except remain where you started, and you can't be sure of your end. None of us know our end, really, or what hand will guide us there. A king may move a man, a father may claim a son, but that man can also move himself. And only then does that man truly begin his own game. Remember that howsoever you are played or by whom, your soul is in your keeping alone. Even though those who presume to play you be kings or men of power, when you stand before God, you cannot say, "But I was told by others to do thus," or that virtue was not convenient at the time. This will not suffice. Remember that. We are all burdened with the choice, as was Hercules, and as once was Napoleon, to either live a life of hardship and glory, or a life of comfort and obscurity. If you choose the former, ambition will be your greatest ally, but also at times your most misguided one. If you choose the latter, ambition will be your greatest enemy, as you are eaten up by not only your adversaries in life, but also the immense dissatisfaction of insecurity as your ambition haunts your lack of action. Guide and temper your ambition with moderation and virtue. There are times to be ruthless and aggressive, and times to be gentle and compromising. With this all in mind, the blessing and burden of ambition is as follows. Ambition will bless you with the drive and energy to carry you to your greatest destiny, and ambition will burden you, as at times it desires conquest that neither enriches the soul or benefits you, thus only dragging you down. Your blessing is the ability to conquer your destiny. Your burden is to make sure your destiny is one that is righteous. Make the right choice. Now, before we set out to unleash our ambitions, we must tame our stallions to not take control over us and lead us astray. It is of immense importance for the health and happiness of our soul that we exercise wisdom and virtue before feeding into ambitions. Because ambitions may rise out of any of the plethora of emotions we have. So before you set out to conquer your destiny, make sure your energy is spent on what is noble in cause and righteous in deed. Thank you.